Hello, and welcome to Ideas with Diana, episode 539 on this October 20th, 2022. For this episode, I'd like to talk about my reflections of the series Deutschland. I watched it on Hulu on streaming, Deutschland 86, 83, 86, and 89. And the reason I watched it was because I remember friends who lived in Germany during that time. And also, I was thinking about my thoughts during that time is when I was working in emergency management and as associate vice president for the Society for Computer Simulation. Um, Even as a medical researcher, first as a medical researcher, because as a medical researcher, I worked with people worldwide across different countries, including countries people from the African continent in different countries, as well as people from Germany and even colleagues, basically from all over Europe, even Poland and others and that though. The thing is, as I was watching is because I was trying to understand something from when I talked with colleagues, about what their thoughts were at that time and my thoughts, and to see what how this would be discussed in the series. And what I liked about the series is that the series, I think, showed really what the concerns were and what the people really had to live through, because it was a strange time. And even in college reading Der Stern and Spiegel, and others like that though, about what was going on in Berlin, and like many Germans will tell foreigners that Berlin was never a divided city. It was an occupied city, but it was never divided because Berlin was Berlin, even with the wall, because the people still had a common identity even during that crisis. When I was watching the series, what I was surprised about though was they opened the series with Major Tom coming home by Schilling, which I thought was very good because it really did show sort of what was really everyone thinking, and even the actors when they showed the stills, or at the beginning, for the intro, it really did explain what the thought process was, what the emotion, what the psychology is, because it showed people basically who realized that their history needed to end, and that somehow basically they were caught in the middle. But how could they do this without themselves getting burned alive for doing it? And well, I should stop saying it, but the thing is, as I watched this, I really did gather and understand just how um, difficult and how involved it was, because it is a case where people were trying to, they realized they had a bad system, and they were trying to do something, but again, the bad system was so overwhelming that basically they couldn't do anything about it. Yet there are some things that basically they had concerns about too, about the other system. So it's a case where basically, do you judge something because it's not perfect, or because one imperfection is less than the other? So it showed that basically some of them we had a challenge of a crisis of confidence, as in terms of their belief, but eventually their beliefs were altered when they sort of saw that basically, when things really became tough, the old maxim, the end justified the means, took over, and that's when they really had to make a decision what to do for themselves. In essence, the characters were sort of like second lieutenants. You try to follow orders, or you follow orders and follow orders, and then eventually what happens, you make it in order that you're going to follow, that you're following, and even though you followed and did it right, you still get squished, and well, normally you're not supposed to tell what happens in a series in the end, but the reason I'm going to say it is because I it reminded me of how many of us felt in the United States, especially when I worked for SDS when the Berlin Wall came down and when the Cold War was finally over. Because what happens, it showed in the series that basically many people were hugging, kissing, celebrating that the Berlin Wall came down, even leaders hugging and kissing, celebrating. So finally, we got this terrible thing as the Cold War is over, this big cloud hanging over us and about ready to spew rain of radiation upon everyone if we weren't careful. And you know, during that period, I many people even United as when I worked for SS, we felt that I felt the same way because it was like finally maybe after all these years of not trusting each other and not and sort of always having doubt or suspicion, maybe we can get together and do stuff and do it in space science and other things. And we did. Even in emergency management, there are colleagues from this the what I forgot the name in St. Petersburg, Russia. The Advanced Science Institute in St. Petersburg, Russia. Excuse me. It might come back to me. It's just sometimes I do have this recall issue, but the Advanced Science Institute in St. Petersburg, they came in one year when they started participating with SDS, working on emergency management. Boy, they did a lot of good. They did a lot of good for world ecology. I remember one colleague I worked with, he shared with me research that he was doing on studies of the force and growth and force of trees. And the most important point I remember what he told me was it's a very important point for any living system was he was studying the genetics, how the genetics in trees change basically, because when you look at a genetic code, a lot of people think of a genetic code as just one common string. It really isn't. It has parts of this, parts of that, parts of this, parts of that. It's almost like a jacquard loom coat or even like this. There's many different colored threads in here and other things and well the thing is what happens he studied well what happens if a new tree species should come in and establish force, well what happened and he studied it, but he developed a simulation. And when he developed the simulation, I remember I asked him, I said, well, I said, can you tell me? He says, well, I discovered something that basically once you have a new thing introduced into an established forest, the genetic code is altered. So instead of being something like this, it might be something like this. But if you try to say, well, if we get rid of this disruptive element, we can go back to this. No, it never happens, because what happens once the genetics and the fabric of development is changed, you can never go back to the forest primeval. You have to live with what you have. So in a way, it's almost like problems. Once we have a problem, we can't expect to go back to the forest primeval or go back to situations that we had in the past. But what we could do is by talking and other things, we could sort of try to live with the new genetics that exist and figure out a way so we can live in cooperation and peace. What I liked about with the one person, the reason I'm not giving his name now is because of this woke culture and because of this Russophobia environment, other ethnic phobia and other types of silly hatreds and prejudices that exist now. That's why I'm not giving out his name, because he has done great work, and I hope he can still continue to do so in the future. Well, suffice to say, when I asked him, what he did was at that time we worked with 3.5-inch floppy disk, and what happened was he sent me a floppy disk, and he actually sent me the simulation as written in Turbo C, which by that time at the end of the Cold War, Turbo Pascal, Turbo C was used in the United States, Canada, Europe, Russia. It was almost like a de facto sort of common computer language, Pascal or C, that was used back then. So he sent it to me, compiled it. I looked at it and said, God, this is great. What I did is I made a copy of the papers he sent me in disk, and I wrote a special letter to the president saying, hey, you guys got to look at this stuff. This guy's doing great work. He's doing great work in ecology, world ecology, and And President Clinton looked at it, and he liked it. He sent me a special card thanking me for it. And and that was really a great point. That was like about 96. But then, suddenly about 98 though, um, it's just basically what we ran into is that around 98 though, we always found that basically something had changed, because basically this is when globalization was changing, coming, and globalization was supposed to mean that everyone, we could manufacture everything. China, Russia, everyone's going to be able to live the same standard of living. You'd be able to go out to Wendy's and have a Coke or coffee or something else like that, and stuff like that, and just basically just have everyone could share in a common upper level quality of life. But when we look at it nowadays, that's not the case. Globalization did turn on itself, and we do have complications because of what happened from December 17th and February 24th. Um, I still think basically it would be better if we could have a conference on this, talk about this, meet somewhere, and also just follow the SDS protocols that we had when we did our conferences. I'm sorry, no press reports. We just talked as scientists, and we discussed this. And also we also had military personnel, because SDS conferences were not classified, but again, no press. And we were able to do great things. And I still think that maybe something can be done about this, because it distresses me to see that we've gone from what I might call a computer war, where basically you have the soldiers attacking the soldiers and tanks attacking the tanks. And it's like a computer game. When someone plays a computer game, it's always you're attacking the enemy soldier, you're attacking the enemy tank. There's never collateral damage or collateral injuries as civilians. But in real war, there is. And now we're getting to the point of real war. The citizens in Donbass has been facing real war since 2014. Now the citizens in Kiev and Lviv are facing real war now, except they're getting better press coverage than the citizens of the Donbass. But many people are still hurting. 40% of the power is knocked out. Many people may have a hard time in the winter. Even in Europe, many people are going to have a hard time here, because people wonder whether 2 months of liquefied natural gas is enough to survive the winter, and also with the electric bills. So I still feel that there's a better solution to what we're doing, and and I still wonder, I still think eventually we can get back to working together like we did after the Cold War, not go into this a new Cold War, or Cold War 2.0, or there's been other terms used, that we can avoid this. Well, let me know what you think. I prefer to be reached by Twitter at Diana18. And as I've said in the past, if you'd like me to communicate in other channels, just send me a message via Twitter, and I'll set up an account to communicate by other channels. And finally, just to remember these thoughts: don't allow anyone to blind you. Don't allow anyone to muzzle what you hear. Don't allow anyone to muzzle your speech. And be strong, be strong, be strong. There's a better solution than what we're doing, and it will be found. Be strong. This has been Ideas with Diana, episode 539, on October 20th, 2022.